The Run Disney Dopey Challenge 2024 edition. We start 10 months out on the Do Hard Things Today podcast. All right, Jed. Episode 97 of the podcast. We are 10 months out from the Run Disney Walt Disney World Marathon weekend and the Dopey Challenge. We've got a great, we're going to do it a little bit different this year. We do some series with Dopey every year because it seems to be, helps to motivate people and those people doing the Dopey Challenge. And we'll explain them exactly what it is here in a second. But we wanted to get some other people involved, and we're going to be telling some stories this year. Monthly, we'll come to you and we'll have some stories, have some interviews from some people who are long-time Dopies, some people that have some very interesting stories of obstacles they've overcome, and then we're going to have some first-timers on the podcast. So we wanted to be able to bring these things to you, and again, we're 10 months out, so you would be thinking, why in the world are we going to be doing a podcast 10 months out from a race? Jed, and I know that you guys are going to be down there that weekend as well. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. I guess I'm going to be a 5K. Haven't decided just yet. Walker or runner, one or the other.
Y'all heard him just commit.
Yeah, and Bonnie's going to do the half.
Yes, and she's actually going to be someone we're going to bring on the podcast as we're talking about preparing for these different things and what's going on. So it's going to be awesome this time. We're going to have Jed and Bonnie will be down there. They're huge Disney connoisseurs, for lack of a better term.
You can say freaks. It's fine.
Freaks. They're Disney freaks, and so so it's cool. It's going to be cool to have them in. So just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork in this first podcast for those of you that are listening, especially those of you that are tackling this for the first time. And I think it's very important at this point in time to don't overestimate and don't underestimate what the Dopey Challenge is. I've talked about this before, but I want to reiterate it. We're 10 months out. Don't overestimate what this is. If you'll be consistent and do the things that we lay out, if you'll follow a plan, Jeff Galloway's got a plan that starts over in July. If you'll just stay consistent and do the training, you'll have a very enjoyable 4 days. Not saying it won't be a hard 4 days, but you will be able to enjoy those 4 days. On the flip side, don't underestimate it. This is not something for some people. I've talked to people that have done this the first time after the last race, and they are miserable because they didn't put the training in. They felt like, hey, I've even run a marathon before and not been fully trained for it, so I felt like I could just get through this. You may be able to get through it, but it is going to be a miserable Sunday on that marathon day, because what it is, for those of you who don't know, Dopey Challenge is during Walt Disney World Marathon weekend in January, and it is 4 days of racing. You run a 5K on Thursday, you run a 10K on Friday, run a half marathon on Saturday, and you run a full marathon on Sunday. So it is a lot of time on your feet. And so, but again, I don't want you to overestimate it or underestimate what that is. And if you'll just go into it with open eyes and be consistent, you're going to be fine. Jed, as you look at, you've been a part of several podcasts with this. You have, you were kind of, we were communicating a lot when I was down there this past time. What would you think if you were considering doing this 10 months out? What would be your biggest concerns and biggest questions that you would have?
Given my current level of fitness, I'd be concerned about, and you're talking about if I was doing the entire challenge.
If you were doing the entire challenge.
How am I going to get to Sunday and not get swept when I get there?
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge. If you're investing that much money, if you're doing the entry fees, if you've planned this whole thing out, if you're going to invest 10 months of your time into it, how do I complete it? How do I maximize my chances to get through the thing?
Yeah. Well, the word there is consistency, and we'll go into different training plans, different things that you can do to be consistent and to be able to get to that finish line. And I believe that almost anybody can if they do the work. And so, that's what most people are asking right now, and especially first timers. They are a little bit nervous, a little bit, will I really be able to do this? I'm going to spend all this money, all this time, all this training. What if I can't get to the end? So that's what we're here to help. First thing that you need to do is you need to understand why you're doing this. What's your why? Why you don't just sign up for the Dopey Challenge on a whim.
Right.
Well, I guess some people may. But for generally speaking, this is going to be something that's a bucket list item. That's, hey, I run a half marathon. Maybe I've run a marathon. I want to challenge myself to see if I can do something. Generally, there's a why behind that. It may be you may have a big birthday coming up. You may be turning 40, maybe turning 50, there may be something that maybe someone you're running for, maybe a health issue that you've overcome. Figure out what that why is, because that why you'll always be able to go back to when you're in the middle of deep training, when you're, whenever you're getting up early to go to those races, when you're on Sunday and you're halfway in and you feel like you're about to absolutely die and you're having to push through, go back to that why. Mm-hmm. So establish that early on. And that, knowing your why will help to carry you through a lot of these things. And, 10 months out, what do you need to be doing? There's number one, registration is right around the corner. April 11th is when registration will be going on. For those of you that experienced registration last year, it was an absolute nightmare. I don't think it will be as bad this year because we had a couple of anniversaries last year in the races, and those are always going to be highly attended races. But I do think that we are back on kind of a regular schedule of COVID, kind of knocked things off. But now used to be to where Dopey would sell out. It would sell out in a day. I would anticipate that to still be the case. So on April 11th, you need to be at your computer. You need to be rolling to be able to get yourself registered for that. Next thing, you need to be thinking about what your plan is. And Jeff Galloway's got a plan that starts over in July, but you need to be thinking about, what kind of a plan do you want to do? Do you want to do you want to try to run the entire races? Do you want to do a run walk method? Do you want to just do you want to just walk the entire time? You need to figure out what that is, because you will need to train to that point. Need to be thinking about where to stay. You don't have to make those reservations now, but you need to be thinking about where you want to stay. Do you want to be on a monorail resort? Do you want to be do you want to stay on property? Do you want to stay off? Or whatever that may be, you need to be thinking about that now, because it's all of these dates will start really creeping up on you if you don't do it. The other thing, if you need to lose 10 or 15 pounds, now would be the time to do that. It is surprisingly hard to lose extra pounds whenever you're in the middle of a deep marathon and Dopey training. You're having to take in a lot of calories, a lot of stuff. It's surprisingly hard to lose weight while you're in the deep middle of the training. So if you need to drop a little weight, which really helps, if you've got an extra 10 or 15 pounds that you're carrying around, that makes a huge difference over 48.6 miles. I've gone into them where I've needed to lose 20 pounds, and it makes a huge difference in your performance and the way that you feel and the way that your body feels. Next thing is strength and core training. These are all things you can start to do now, and we'll do some separate podcasts on all of these. So don't feel like we're not giving you the information you need. We'll cover these things in greater detail. I'm just just kind of laying the groundwork for Dopey being 10 months out. Strength and core training, that's something that's hugely important and something that runners often, well, a lot of times we just don't do them because we don't have time. We don't feel like we have time. But your core training, your strength training, even if you're just putting in 15 or 20 minutes a day on these things, well, it'll just pay off. Again, we'll go into greater detail about these in later podcasts, but these are things that you can look. You can YouTube strength training for runners, core training for runners, yoga for runners, those kind of things. It'll really help you to be able to those things that we call self-care. So if you were signing up, Jed, does that put you in a good spot?
A little bit. Yeah. It's a lot to think about. I will say never having done the Dopey, never having run an event down there. Disney by itself is overwhelming.
It is.
Before you add anything else. So how does one not get overwhelmed now at the very, very start? Before you can, like you said, we're probably half a month before you could even sign up. How do you not get overwhelmed right now?
Yeah, well, you control what you can control. If you've made this decision, you're 10 months out, you need to start training. I'm going to talk about this. I think I've always felt like to be ready for the Dopey Challenge by the end of June, because July is really when the Jeff Galloway plan starts,
right?
A training plan starts, and that's generally when people start really doing more serious training. I think by the end of June, you need to be able to comfortably finish a half marathon. You don't have to go out and have a blazing time. That's not what I'm saying, but you need to be trained to a point where you can comfortably go cover 13 miles in a half marathon and not feel like your body is absolutely shutting down the next week. So you just want to control what you can control right now. If all you're thinking about right now is registration, I'm worried about registration. What if I don't get in? What if I don't finish? What if I get swept? I hear about these balloon ladies, 48 miles. That's crazy. How am I going to run a marathon after 3 days? If you start thinking of all these negative what ifs, it'll just paralyze you. You can control what you can control right now. You know April 11th is a big date. I'm going to be ready to do my part in getting registered. Whatever, some people want to have 3 computers up and whatever that may be, but I will just say this, puff my chest out a little bit. I'm a perfect Dopey.
Yeah.
And so we get a special link, so we don't have to deal with the registration mess. But I've also had to put in 10 right. years of running.
480 miles.
Yeah, 480 miles. And so you know April 11th is coming. So that's registration. Nothing you can do about that now. Nothing you can do about it now. And really people will try to give you a million hints and tricks on registration. Don't listen to them, because there's no rhyme or reason to what happens. We have people, I can tell you people that have been in the queue for, that's a line, in line for registration on their computer, that were in line for 2 hours that did not get registered, and people that pulled up their computer minutes after that did get in. So there seems to be no rhyme or reason for when it gets completely overwhelmed, when their system gets completely overwhelmed like that, of what happens. They say they've done some things logistically with their systems to be able to improve that. That remains to be seen. End of the day, be ready on April 11th that morning and get yourself registered. Again, I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was last year, because we're not dealing with the anniversary races,
right?
And those are always a nightmare. And again, don't think 48.6 miles. How am I going to run that? You don't have to run it tomorrow. If you prepare yourself, if you take the baby steps, we close the podcast by saying, today,
right.
Just focus on today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Well, if you do that, your consistency will carry you through, and you'll be surprised. Again, first thing we said is don't overestimate it. Don't let this thing whip you before you get out there.
Before you even start.
It's going to be a big enough battle out on the course. Don't let it whip you before you even get to the course. So, that half marathon is a big deal. Find one. I tell people to go ahead and sign up for a few local races. Do a 5K, do a 10K. Sign up for a half marathon over in the summer that kind of gives you a benchmark to hit at, because it's hard. You're looking out 10 months. It's hard to stay consistent preparing for something that's 10 months out.
Right.
You need these little markers along the way. Hey, I ran a 5K. I ran a half marathon. Did pretty good. Felt pretty good. You come out of half marathon, it's like, hey, I felt pretty good. My training has gotten me to this point. Then you're able to jump into the Dopey training, and you're not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
It's hard. Even in July, I mean, you start from zero. It just makes it a lot harder to get yourself prepared for what's coming in January. The strategies we've talked about before. Again, we'll cover these on a podcast later, but you need to be thinking now about, is the marathon my main goal? Is the half marathon my main goal? Am I going to run them all as their individual races, or am I just out there to have a good time? Am I going to Disney and I'm going to complete the races? I'm going to do the character stops. You need to be thinking about that now, because you'll need to train specifically for these things, for these different strategies. That'll need to be a part of your training plan. So, this is just some foundational stuff. Again, we're 10 months out. We're going to bring you one of these every month, and we're going to have individuals on the podcast that are in all different places. Some that they're brand new, first time doing Dopey, some veterans, some people that have overcome some amazing odds, and we're going to be able to cover these things with you. And hopefully, the desire in this series is to motivate you, to give you something to keep it in front of you where you're not slacking on your training. You're doing what you need to do, and hopefully continuing to build the community of the Walt Disney World runners and the Dopey Challenge specifically, of what's going on there. We're going to be covering the other races as well. Wine and Dine is over in November. We've got some, springtime, all these different things that are out there for the Disney racing community. So, just stay consistent. Do the few things that I've talked about here. Get these things in your head, and don't. The biggest takeaway from this one is don't overestimate it and don't underestimate it. And those are two mistakes you can make. And those things can end up crippling your progress. So, guys, just keep looking, keep following the podcast. We're going to be putting out some training plans for half marathons that can help you get ready for the end of June, when that July training block starts up. But next month we'll be coming back to you with a podcast. We'll have a special guest on, and we will be hopefully encouraging you to be the very best you can be. And just remember, you do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.